Imagine being born into one of the most privileged lives in the ancient world, a prince, surrounded by luxury, shielded from all pain, all suffering, all ugliness, and then, one day, walking out of your palace and never going back. Not for power. Not for conquest. Not for money. But because you saw something so devastating about the human condition that you couldn't look away until you understood it completely. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. The world would come to know him simply as the Buddha, the Awakened One. And his journey from palace to enlightenment is one of the most extraordinary stories ever told. Siddhartha Gautama was born around 563 BC in Lumbini, in what is now southern Nepal, into the Shakya clan, a ruling family of warriors and nobles. His father, Suddhodana, was a king, or according to some accounts, a powerful chieftain, who wanted his son to become the greatest ruler the world had ever seen. But before Siddhartha was born, a prophecy arrived. A wise man told Suddhodana that his son would grow up to be one of two things, either a great world conqueror, a Chakravartin, a wheel-turning king who would unite all nations, or a great spiritual teacher who would change the inner world of humanity forever. Suddhodana, being a king, naturally preferred the first option. And so he made a decision: he would shield his son from everything that might turn his attention inward. No suffering. No sickness. No death. No poverty. No pain of any kind. Young Siddhartha grew up inside a paradise of 3 palaces, one for each season, surrounded by beautiful gardens, music, dancing, fine food, and every pleasure the ancient world could offer. He was educated in the arts of war, philosophy, and governance. He married a beautiful princess named Yasodhara, and they had a son together named Rahula. By every external measure, his life was perfect. But something was missing. Even as a young man, Siddhartha was restless in a way that no amount of luxury could soothe. He had everything, and it wasn't enough. The turning point came when Siddhartha was around 29 years old. Against his father's wishes, he ventured outside the palace walls, and in 4 fateful encounters, his entire world collapsed. First, he saw an old man, bent, frail, hobbled by age. He had never seen old age before. Then he saw a sick man, feverish, suffering, in agony. He had never seen sickness before. Then he saw a corpse being carried to cremation. He had never seen death before. And finally, he saw a wandering ascetic, a holy man with nothing, walking the road in perfect serenity, free from all attachment. These 4 sights, known in Buddhist tradition as the 4 signs, broke Siddhartha open. He realized that all the luxury in the world could not protect him, or anyone he loved, from old age, sickness, and death. That suffering was not an accident or a misfortune, it was the fundamental condition of human existence. And he knew, in that moment, that he could not go back to pretending it wasn't there. That night, he did something almost incomprehensible. He kissed his sleeping wife and newborn son goodbye, never waking them, walked out of the palace, cut off his hair, exchanged his royal robes for the simple cloth of a wanderer, and disappeared into the forest. He was a prince who had everything. He chose to have nothing. Because he was looking for something that palaces couldn't provide, the truth about suffering, and the way out of it. For 6 years, Siddhartha searched. He studied under the greatest spiritual masters of his time, mastering their techniques so completely that each teacher told him he had nothing more to teach. He practiced extreme asceticism, starving himself, denying his body every comfort, pushing himself to the absolute edge of physical endurance. At one point, he was eating just 1 grain of rice a day, so thin that, as the texts describe, you could press his stomach and feel his spine. But neither extreme, the extreme of luxury he had left behind, nor the extreme of self-deprivation he had thrown himself into, brought him what he was looking for. He realized that the truth lay somewhere in between. He called it the middle way. One evening around 528 BC, Siddhartha sat down beneath a fig tree, now known as the Bodhi Tree, the Tree of Awakening, in a place called Bodh Gaya in present-day India. He made a vow: he would not rise from that spot until he had found the answer. He sat through the night, facing every temptation, every fear, every distraction that the mind could throw at him. And as the morning star rose before dawn, something shifted. A clarity arrived that was total and complete. He understood the nature of suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path to its end. He was awake. He was the Buddha. He was 35 years old. For the next 45 years, Buddha walked the roads of northern India and taught. He taught kings and farmers, priests and outcasts, men and women, young and old, at a time when the Indian caste system declared that some people were sacred and others barely human. He sat and ate and talked with everyone. His radical egalitarianism, the idea that every human being, regardless of birth, had the capacity for awakening, was as socially revolutionary as it was spiritually profound. His core teachings, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, were deceptively simple. Suffering exists. Suffering arises from craving and attachment. Suffering can end. And there is a path to that ending: right understanding, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Not commandments from a god. Not rituals or sacrifices. Just a practical, testable method for understanding your own mind, and freeing yourself from its patterns. He also gave the world the practice of meditation, the systematic training of attention and awareness that is today used by hundreds of millions of people, prescribed by doctors, practiced in schools and hospitals and boardrooms on every continent. Modern neuroscience has confirmed what Buddhist practitioners claimed for millennia, that meditation measurably changes the brain, reduces anxiety, increases compassion, and improves well-being. The man who sat under a tree 2,500 years ago has offices in Silicon Valley and clinical trials in Harvard Medical School. Buddhism today is the fourth largest religion in the world, with approximately 500 million followers across Asia and increasingly across the West. But Buddha's influence reaches far beyond formal religion. His ideas about impermanence, compassion, mindfulness, and the nature of the self have permeated psychology, philosophy, neuroscience, and popular culture in ways that most people never even trace back to their source. When you hear someone talk about being present, about letting go, about non-attachment, they are, whether they know it or not, speaking the language of a prince who walked out of a palace in Nepal 2,500 years ago. Buddha died around 483 BC, at approximately 80 years old, in a small town called Kushinagar in present-day India. According to tradition, his last meal was a dish of either pork or mushrooms. Scholars still debate which, offered by a blacksmith named Kunda. He fell ill shortly after and, surrounded by his disciples, lay down between two sala trees that burst into out-of-season bloom above him. His last words, as recorded in the Pali Canon, were, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your salvation with diligence." No drama. No miracles. No final battle. Just a man lying down in a forest, reminding his followers one last time that everything changes, and that the work of waking up is yours to do. He left behind no writings of his own. Everything we know of his teachings was memorized and transmitted orally by his disciples before being written down centuries later. He left behind no empire, no army, no political legacy. He left behind an idea, that the source of suffering is inside us, and so is the way out. And that idea has traveled farther, and lasted longer, than most empires ever dreamed of. 2,500 years after a prince walked out of his palace and sat under a tree, his ideas are being tested in neuroscience laboratories, taught in schools, practiced in hospitals, and downloaded as apps on smartphones. The man who owned nothing left everything. He never claimed to be a god. He never asked to be worshipped. He simply said, "Don't believe me because I say so. Try it for yourself. See if it's true." In a world full of people telling you what to believe, that might be the most radical thing anyone has ever said. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Who do you want to see next?